This is CG Talks, the podcast where CG guys talk about CG.
This podcast is powered by GarageFarm.net, a place where 3D cloud rendering is incredibly fast and cheap.
And we're back with CG Talks, the podcast where CG guys talk about computer graphics. Today I have Kay John Yim with me, a CG artist and an architect. We were talking about AI and all different new tools that are coming for the artists or are going to replace the artists. That depends on the approach that you take. Now I would like to talk about the tools that John uses for his artworks. So let's maybe start off with the question: what is your main 3D DCC, and what makes it the best tool for you?
Yeah, so my time at the moment is usually actually equally split among Cinema 4D, Rhino, and Houdini. But if I have to pick just one, it would be Cinema 4D. And it is because, I picked Cinema 4D initially as a gateway to render softwares when I first started learning about rendering 6 years ago. Notably, I tried to get into Octane and Redshift render. Well, I've used Maya and FreezeMax for work too, but Cinema 4D is just much snappier. The UI is much quicker, and also, in my opinion, has the best material management system, which is very good for managing architectural scenes, as you could imagine. That has a lot of materials, and Cinema 4D is the only DCC that allows you to open multiple projects in tabs like a browser without opening another instance of Cinema 4D when you want to copy and paste object across files, different files. And Rhino, as for Rhino and Houdini, Rhino is my primary modeling software, which I've been using for, I think, 12 years now. I think Rhino is still my favorite modeling software. I've been using it for such a long time now. It is basically to me, I just use it by instinct, and Houdini is something that I've been trying to learn in the past 2 years, because I was trying to get more into the animation side of things, and I realized that there is so little that you can do in Cinema 4D to automate stuff in a more procedural way that I have to get into Houdini. But currently I use a lot more than this 3 softwares, but these 3 would be the main ones.
Talking about Rhino, have you been using also like plugins like as Grasshopper, or because there are I know architects use it for generative architecture in Rhino.
Yeah, I actually first got into Rhino because I have to use Grasshopper back in university, and but nowadays I realize that actually a lot of what you can do in Grasshopper, I can do much better in Houdini, and being able to render it directly in Redshift in Houdini as well. So I spend much less time now using Grasshopper.
Okay, so that's probably for the architectural part of your works, because from what I know, Rhino is more like a design software used for architecture or general design. It's using like more a CAD approach than the other DCCs that you mentioned that are used for animation. And you introduced a lot of human and animal characters in your artworks. Are there specific tools that you use for this task? Can you tell us a bit about your workflow for this part of the art?
Yeah, for characters, I use Character Creator and iClone to create and animate my characters respectively. Then I use Marvelous Designer to model and simulate the clothes, and then usually the character and then the simulated clothings would go into Houdini for some post-sim cleanup before eventually going into Cinema 4D and Redshift for rendering. As for the animals, unfortunately, I don't really have a good workflow. It's usually a combination of ZBrush for sculpting, Maya for grooming. Sometimes I simply just project a photo onto a blob of mesh, like it is a technique that I stole from Ian Hilbert, and basically just grow a bunch of hair from it and call it a day. I'm definitely not the artist that you should seek advice for creating CG animals.
Yeah, but that's always curious to hear about artists coping with this kind of tasks, because you can't be a specialist in everything, but you kind of have to do a lot of areas in your work, and you have to handle it somehow, like using shortcuts, tools, pre-made assets. Like for humans, have you been dabbling with MetaHuman for an Unreal Engine, for example? Have you tried it?
Yeah, I've played around with MetaHuman, but I haven't used it actually in any projects yet. I mean, strangely, MetaHuman looks really good in a vacuum. Like if you open their Unreal Engine, there's a sample project. If you put the MetaHuman in a studio lighting environment, it looks very convincing. But if you try to put them in context, it just looks out of place, and the quality is not convincing enough for me to use them in my profession, in my personal works, or in my professional work. So I hope it will get a lot better, because then I can speed up my workflow a lot faster in real time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wanted to ask also about the tools that you maybe wanted to use but haven't had a chance or opportunity to use. Is there such a tool that you do like to learn, but you didn't have the time or chance to get your hands on
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So one thing that I really wanted to, but I never had a chance to use, is motion capture, mocap suits, or mocap technology in general. So I remember I first saw Xsense mocap suit in person a couple of years ago at an Unreal conference, seeing a person in a mocap suit and another person using an iPad as a camera to shoot, and then having a creature and a person in spacesuit appearing on screen. It was kind of mind blowing, and I've seen scenes really wanted to use mocap, but I still don't have the opportunity to. Um, it's just because mocap suits prices in general, in combination with other softwares, are more or less upwards of £10,000 per year, which is way beyond my budget. There's a startup called Move.ai that introduced a suitless mocap this year. I've signed up for the beta, but I'm following it very closely. But I have yet to hear back from them.
Mhm. We also interviewed on CG Talks. We interviewed CEO of DeepMotion.
Oh, I
It's
see.
also a service offering video to motion capture data service. It's using some kind of machine learning AI technology to analyze the images, but it's still not the quality that you get from a mocap suit. But seeing the tempo of development of all these AI technologies and things that are improving every month, probably this will be like a technology more available everyday artists in the future. Like that, you won't need the suits, but the video is enough. I'm thinking like of it as a step. Animators do use their video footage that they record themselves acting, and then they just like manually animate stuff. And right now it's
Yeah.
like a machine is like replacing an artist in this step, and I think that's pretty exciting because it allows to quicker, get from the thought about something to the end result.
Yeah, I mean, if any mocap companies are open to sponsoring artists, I'm more than happy to create showcase projects in return for a mocap suit.
Yeah, I've seen like the latest challenge from Clinton Jones also offered Rococo suits as the main prize, but you have to be
Yeah.
one of the few thousand artists that wins the first prize for it.
Yeah.
So lucky guy who had that chance. And have you had the chance to work using VR? I've seen like really interesting stuff done by sculptors, for example, that they describe this process in VR glasses and VR manipulators. That this is like a more streamlined workflow than the traditional mouse and keyboard.
Yeah, so if you look at my ArtStation portfolio, you would actually see the first project that I published is an Unreal Engine project. And oddly enough, after that, I actually haven't looked into VR much, and there are two main reasons. The one is I've tried using VR headsets. I just get nauseous very quickly in about 15 minutes. So whether it is because of the low frame rate or whether because I my I'm not I'm not adapted to looking at screens at such a close distance. I have no idea, but that put me off from using VR in the first place. But if we're talking about just creating VR environments in general, um, or more specifically, like using Unreal Engine 5, I think to me, the quality is not quite there yet. And because I'm an architect, I'm very meticulous and about the about materials and like textures in particular are not showing us as good, are still not showing as good as that you could get in offline renders, say like V-Ray or Redshift renders. So I haven't really worked on much in VR or in any game engines since the first project that I published on ArtStation. But I'm pretty sure that Unreal Engine will got a lot better next year in next version. So I will definitely try it out more later on.
Yeah, what I meant was more like the headsets as a interface for the artist, like the immersion. But as you mentioned, the technology is probably not yet there, and like for some people that get nauseous, or I've thought the same about maybe this wave of 3D cinema that was at the time when Avatar came out. This was like a self-pronounced revolution in cinema, which turned out to
Yes.
be just like a additional genre of movies, which some people like and others don't. Like there were a lot of people that didn't enjoy the experience that much, and they wanted to see the traditional movies. And that maybe also gets into the AI thing a little bit, because sometimes it seems like we are solving an issue that's not really there. Like I've seen an ad recently, an ad of a VR headset with an app for artists to practice live drawing with a human figure. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, that's great, but why do you really even need, there's an additional value that you can do it anywhere and whenever you want it, but that's not really such a big deal just to go for a live drawing session with a real life situation. Like, why even bother making all this technology to solve the problem that's not really like a problem in itself, right? So maybe sometimes we
Yeah,
are like overcomplicating stuff.
I agree.
Yeah, but I think like the immersion in terms of like VR is maybe more of a technological thing that to solve, and to let artists not to have to rely so much on a technological interface that wasn't really designed for art. Like, for example, a mouse and keyboard, it's not really designed to be an artist's tool, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about the artist tool. Actually, funny enough, I actually have because I know that a lot of artists use stylus, but I actually um, have been using a trackball mouse for like more than a decade. I personally actually um, feel like using a mouse is more intuitive than using a pen, even for sculpting. But that's just me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so probably this kind of handles with VR is kind of something in between, because it's like using your hands. Like for a sculptor, I've seen like mostly positive reactions from sculptors that are doing sculpture in VR, because this kind of reminds of the real life situation when you're sculpting with a tool and with your hand. So I'm thinking that this is more of trying to be as natural for the artist as possible, but it also comes down to getting used to some workflows, probably.
Yeah.
As like someone who's drawing all his life, maybe it's more natural for him to just keep a pen in his hand, but it takes some muscle memory, probably. I think that what you said about offline renders that are still ahead of the real-time engines. uh, Well, I just wanted to use that opportunity to ask you about your render farm experience, because the CG Talks podcast is sponsored by GarageFarm.net, and yeah, I think it would be nice to also scratch this topic. As a 3D artist, you said you are using render farms. What was your experience so far with these kind of services?
Yeah, so I only use render farms for animation projects, and since my goal of this year is actually to learn character animations, so as you could imagine, I've used render farm quite a lot throughout the year. Using render farm is definitely a learning process. Uh, I would say there are a lot more things to consider when using a render farm, like I normally wouldn't think about when rendering locally, like the cache size, uploading and downloading, bandwidth, plugin support, and so on. Uh, and and one thing that is really crucial to me is Redshift proxy support, which is um, basically a format like V-Ray scene, I think, is um, uh, that is able to allows me to export whole scene with a lot of heavy geometry, and then keeping the UI very fluid, so that I can put as much detail I can fit into a lot of my projects. And like a lot of the works that you'll see in my projects have a lot of architectural details. And so Garage Farm is one of the render farms, one of the few render farms that truly support Redshift proxies. And I have to say, using render farm, uh, putting the learning process aside, maybe for the first or the second time using it, is amazing.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And we're trying to do our best to support the artists and to make the workflow as seamless as possible. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of technical details that go into the process, because you are working with an external computer environment, and there are always like possible issues because of that. And that's good to consider. Also making test renders with the farm. and to check whether everything is working. And you mentioned that you wanted to learn character animation, so that's kind of like another skill set and a tool. I wanted to ask, how do you manage this kind of broad variety that's involved into making 3D artworks? Do you have like a particular way of doing that, or maybe you thought about collaborating with someone on a bigger project? Because like right now you're doing your projects as a one man army, so to speak, like a generalist. And sometimes, yeah, like bigger projects of the sort of like movies or even short movies, they very often involve like a whole team of specialists. So these are maybe two questions in one, like the variety and how you manage yourself, and have you thought about working in a team maybe in the future?
Yeah. So to your first question, I don't really think about much. I don't really think or don't really actively manage, like you said, a variety of things. I don't think about as much. But this is partially, I think, because due to my training as an architect, already acclimated myself to a wide range of disciplines. In general, I don't learn a particular software or discipline just in case I might need it in the future. I only learn it in time if I need it in a particular project, or if I learn it, I would force myself to use it right away. A case in point, I never really bothered to learn about optimizing Redshift render times until I started working on more animation projects this year. I used to just put all the settings on default, but then I learned that it's just going to take so much time and money to render animation. So I had to learn about the various methods of denoising, the pros and cons of different sampling methods, the AI tools of frame interpolation, all these to cut down my render times. And so my tool set and the discipline that I touch upon gradually builds up over project organically, rather than I actually just planned out and that I have to actually actively manage it. And to your second question about whether I want to work with a team, although I really value full control of my work, which I think a lot of the architects would agree that everything that we do are very deliberate. Nothing happens by accident. I would like to work in team given the opportunity. If I have 48 hours in a day, I would actually take just any position and join a film crew, simply to experience and learn more about particularly the filming process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's maybe in the future it will happen. Well, who knows? And right now, with your artworks, you mentioned that you learn for like each part project based. Like when there's a need, you just learn the area. But which of these parts of the workflow for now you enjoy the most? Like what's your forte, or maybe the thing that you really enjoy in the process of making an artwork?
To be honest, I enjoy every part of the 3D process. I enjoy the modeling part. Modeling feels like meditation to me. Um, I enjoy the rendering part. I would say rendering part is easily the most enjoyable part out of the whole process, but also take the longest part out of usually like 80% of the time of a typical project. The one part, though, not necessarily within the 3D workflow, but a part including putting out a project online, I would say is the part that I don't really enjoy, and I would very much like AI to take that over, is reformatting my work, just because I have to put them to different platforms. So like nowadays, that would be a vertical portrait video for Instagram. For YouTube, that would be a 2K video. I wish there is a much simpler way, but a lot of people don't realize it actually takes a lot of time to edit and reformat this artworks, just so that artists can post them up onto different platforms. So I would say that is the least enjoyable part.
Yeah, that's probably that's the thing that can be automated in a way. Maybe someone is already working on a tool for this. So maybe one final question about the work that you're doing would be, can you imagine or seeing all the artworks that you already did and looking into the future, is there like a dream 3D project that you would like to do on your own or with the help of someone else, like a dream project that you would like to take part in or do yourself?
Yeah, it is. I do have a lot. I do have a ton of ideas. Um, One that what a short term goal of mine is actually, or actually a project that I am already working on, is a longer form CG animation, about 2 minutes, that I've been working on. I'm trying to uh, basically I'm trying to do more character animation without a uh, uh, without a mocap suit. But at the moment, my like I mentioned earlier, really mocap is one area that I really wanted to explore more, because um, audience relates a lot more if there are characters in the environment, and of course if that it would be much better if there's a consistent storyline and consistent characters within the animation. So I would say that once the technology becomes more affordable and more available, I would like to experiment with much longer form animations, with stories and more character interactions. Another one is Unreal Engine, which I mentioned as well. Um, I would very much like to jump back into Unreal Engine once the quality has raised, in next year or the year after, um, where I'm interested in working on games as well. Even though I have I have very little knowledge of coding, but maybe AI will be able to automate that part for me. But yeah, I would say it is not. I would say, even though these are not specific, I don't have a specific story or a specific idea, but these character animations and games would be the two areas that I would like to explore, or is my dream to explore in the future.
Yeah, so more like, as we talked about the AI, so it comes down that we really want to tell stories about humans, so to speak. You're talking about characters, that you're diving into character-based stories. I'm thinking that this kind of like wraps up our whole conversation. That is the machines to to serve the human factor, that is using them to tell their human stories, and yeah, to make art that's relatable, and not just it's not just about pixels. It's about the story that we tell through the pixels, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'm pretty glad that we had that conversation. It was really a little bit more into the AI topic than I thought at the very beginning. But I think that this is a topic that's so close to our hearts right now, because it kind of makes us question the whole meaning of what we do. But yeah, I get the feeling from our conversation that there's still the future for the human inside of this whole thing. And it's yeah, just to end on an optimistic note, that it's really all about the stories. And I'm finding that human factor in your artworks. I hope that our audience will also enjoy watching these, and hoping for the longer form to arrive in the nearest future. And yeah, and let the technology serve this noble purpose.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the podcast, and I appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, thank you for giving your time to us, and wishing all the best, and see you around in all the art online community. And I encourage all our audience to find your works, follow, and support your work.
Yep, thank
Thanks
you.
again.